Do a quick review. Moses and Aaron are there. They're doing what God's telling them to do, performing these great miracles. The Egyptian magicians are keeping up, but they fall behind very quickly. And it looks like at this point that they're not going to be able to stop this new God, this God Pharaoh had never heard of. Who is the Lord that I should fear him of the Israelites? And we have to get to this kind of idea. So on the top of your sheet it says, why shouldn't successful people insist on doing things that made them that way? If you're good at something, you really make a name for yourself, why shouldn't you just keep doing that? You're successful. Isn't that good enough? Isn't that great? Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. The second question I put there is, who is truly successful, moral, or good? And if you've been listening to Pastor, you know there's only one good. Only one. And anyone else who's good, it's because you're imitating him. So really you could say, well, successful people are supposed to do these great things. And I think as a misconception, we think, well, this person's successful. They've got everything going on in their life. Mr. Beast is given millions. He's making blind people see. He's doing all these great for attention. Not to change the world, not to make it a better place. I mean, he's doing things that do make some people's lives better, but that's not his goal. Elvis Presley could not be shown from the hips down on television because he had such vibrant movements. Vibrant. And people were like, oh, you can't show that on television. Was Elvis famous for the right reasons? Well, he was famous, still famous, but maybe not for the right reasons. It's not because he was changing the world. In fact, arguably, he had let go of his gospel roots and had moved the opposite direction of where he should have been going. He could have literally changed the world with his music, and instead he degraded it. I'm not saying you can't like his music. By all means, if you want to like his music, that's your business. And it's good music. I'm not saying it's not. But it wasn't under the glory of God. And so this kind of thing, well, what is good? What makes somebody successful? And you just have to be careful with this, because war can make you successful. Pride can make you successful. Celebrity and money and status and power, those can all make you successful. And they're all selfish. So just because somebody's successful doesn't mean we have to emulate them. In our first section, we're looking at those next set of the plagues. And we'll start here with the fourth plague, which is called swarms. Now, we usually use the word flies, and it probably was some form of fly. We don't know if it was just one, though. It just says swarms. The swarm would come upon them. And flies and beetles in Egypt are actually fairly common and popular critters. I know it seems strange to us. We think of flies as pests. And that's exactly why the Egyptians loved them. Flies and beetles were these popular charms. You'd find them on totems. There's even a god with a beetle face, right? There's a fly-faced god. And there's a reason for those kind of things. Flies are adornments. They would make little golden flies, and they put them on necklaces and pendants and things. And you would win them as a soldier or as a leader for being persistent, unceasing, not annoying, unrelenting, right? Fierce, unstoppable. Show of determination and bravery. And so these flies, God said, I'm going to send flies. Behold, I will send a swarm of flies to you. I will send this swarm of flies to you. On you and your servants, and on your people and into your houses. Just like the frogs. And the houses of the Egyptians should be full of swarms of flies. The frogs were annoying because they got everywhere. The flies are more annoying because they land on you. And the flies that they're talking about are biting flies. Like our horsefly, deer flies, gadflies, right? They're a biting pest. And they may, in fact, be full of diseases. And they'll be everywhere you go. You'll step on them, you'll walk on them, they'll be gross, they'll be in everything, they'll be in your food. We're not talking like a fly in your soup, we're talking you uncover the food for the family meal and everywhere. My wife nearly got us to quit camping one year when the flies were thick. And they weren't that thick, but they were thick enough. We had a screen tent, we made do, but she was this close to pulling the plug and be like, nope, not going to do it. Because they can be really annoying. They weren't everywhere. They weren't in our tent. They weren't in our car. They weren't in the screen tent. But they were everywhere else. And it was almost enough to call it quits. But God promised they'd be everywhere, everywhere. Pharaoh's not that, he's not a pushover, though. He's not going to give up so easily. The original text refers only to swarms, but they assume this might be the gadfly. And in Psalm 78, the psalmist Asaph says that he sent swarms of flies which devoured the Egyptians, ate them up. Now, we know that flies don't eat people whole, but like pests on horses or, Carrie, you've seen this. Do you have the little covers when you had horses? Do you have the little covers for them? Yeah. And a horse's tail is nice, but it's only good for a couple, not for hundreds, and not at a time. And here we have the Egyptians being eaten alive by these things. And you see how much it bothers a horse. You do something on purpose to take care of it. The Egyptians have no pesticides like this. And I promise you they're calling on their gods, and the gods aren't seeming to be helped much either, introducing Watchet, the goddess of marshes, cobras, and flies. Boy, I need somebody to help out. Well, you might think it's gross, but we think of marshes as unhelpful. But if you stop and think about it, a lot of marshland gets turned into great farmland. And if you really stop and think about it, a lot of beautiful things grow in this kind of wet area that don't grow anywhere else. Right? Cattails, wild rice. Like in our country, that's what we look at. But for them, it was things like papyrus. They made all their paper out of it. They made clothing and shoes out of it. It was a big deal. Like they made linen, like wrappings and things out of this stuff. And so it was a big deal for them to have this water and to have these materials. And she was the goddess of those things. And to end this plague, Pharaoh acquiesced. He says, he finally buckles a little bit. He's like, fine. I know for the frogs it was too much, but this is way too much. And he agrees to release them. But of course, he hardens his heart, and he changes his mind after the swarms departed. So as soon as Moses works on his behalf with God and the flies leave, he's like, nah, just kidding. Again, just kidding. Not going to do that. I said one thing, but I meant something else. I tricked you. For our scoreboard, if you're keeping track, the biting of the flies. Goshen is kept from this plague entirely. There are no flies in Goshen. God spares them. They don't deserve this. They keep out of it, but they see all their neighbors and all the people that are involved and how it affects them. And so Pharaoh has to barter again. It's so bad. At this point, the scoreboard is kind of ridiculous, as you can see. This isn't like a basketball scoreboard where the points can get pretty high. This is more like a soccer or a hockey scoreboard, where if it gets this high, it's a shutout. Like it's a blowout. Like there's no, like, you're playing for practice at that point. Put in the B squad. In Exodus 9, 2-3, for if you refuse to let them go. Now this is a really important piece here. If you refuse to let them go and still hold them, talking to Pharaoh, that's what he was told to say to Pharaoh, behold, the hand of the Lord will be on your cattle in the field, on the horses and the donkeys and the camels and the oxen and the sheep, a very severe pestilence. Some people like to say, well, the animals that die right here are a direct contradiction. If all the animals of Egypt die in this very moment, then the 3 other plagues that affect animals must be made up. Completely made up. But there's a couple options here, and I just want to point them out to you so you understand that some people's interpretations are what they are, but it's interesting. The first, it says, if you refuse. If Pharaoh would have not refused, although God knew he would, but if he hadn't, it would have been different. But it says, your cattle. Pharaoh's cattle. Who owns most of the cattle in Egypt? Pharaoh. He's a big boss. He's got most of it. And it says in the field. What happens if you got them in the barn? Doesn't say anything about the barn animals. Doesn't say about the ones that are calved or hiding out someplace else. It says your cattle in the field. When the scripture says something, you ought to take it as literal as possible, I think. And the reason for that is because the words matter. And it says cattle and horse and donkeys and camels and oxen and sheep. And the word sheep here is kind of sheep or goats. That's a similar word in the Hebrew. And so when you look at this kind of idea, it looks like it might be Pharaoh's animals only. That's what it looks like. But we don't know for sure. This is a good idea to think of it that way maybe, because otherwise some people are going to try and trip you up. Somebody might come to you and say, Larry, Exodus 9 and Exodus 12 don't match. The animals can't die twice. God didn't resurrect those animals and bring them. Well, of course he didn't. And there are other options. I mean, they may have had to borrow animals from another neighboring community, or maybe they bought them off of the Israelites, or maybe they stole them from the Israelites. There's a lot of options for getting more animals, but I think literally the text says "your" for a reason, and it says "in the field" for a reason. If they're off in the barns or they're not Pharaoh's, they're probably not going to be in danger. God's trying to make a point to Pharaoh, and yes, all of Egypt does suffer because he owns the most of everything, but it doesn't necessarily have to be against them. And the Lord will make a difference between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. It doesn't say all the livestock of Egypt. It says livestock of Egypt, Egyptian livestock. We use adjectives differently than they would have in the Bible. We would say Egyptian livestock versus Israeli livestock. And here it says, so nothing shall die of all the things, all that belongs to the children of Israel. This is the only place that says all. Not a single flock, not a single animal of Israelite stock is going to be suffering. Not one. But the Egyptian ones could. So you just have to know that that's part of what it might be. Introducing Hathor. Hathor is a crowd favorite in Egypt. She's the goddess of love, beauty, and music, and dancing. Egyptians love her. She's the most popular of the feminine goddesses. And you can see on top of her head she's got cow horns with the sun between them. So she has a very strong connection to Ra, another of the Egyptian gods who are represented by the sun, and she's got these cow horns, and it is not uncommon with Hathor to see her in art as an actual cow nursing the pharaoh. But the pharaoh's beneath her udder getting milk and being raised up. This is how important she is to Egyptian culture. And so the cow is representative of pharaonic rule and power and the nourishment required for that. But it's not just her. Aset, or we modernly call her more Isis, that's a Greek name, is the goddess of healing and magic. And so she's also represented oftentimes by the cow horns with the little sun in between them. And the two of them are kind of intermixed at times in Egyptian history. But the reality is like when God says, I'm going to mess with all the Egyptian gods, he means all of them, not just some of them. And so the two of these two kind of share some of this power, these kind of attributes. And the cow, related to the goddess Hathor, is the daughter consort of Ra. So Ra is her dad, and she's the daughter consort. She's the one who hangs out, and she's the mother of the pharaoh. Pharaohs don't exist without Hathor. And so this is important to understand. If you're looking in your sheet, number 2, the Apis bull. The Apis bull is the son of Hathor. It's a manifestation of the pharaoh. There can only be one physical bull of its type at any given time, and if it dies, they mourn it as if it were the pharaoh. They mummify a cow, and they put it in a 60-ton sarcophagus. That's a big rock box for this special cow. That's how special this cow is. Can you guess which cow died when God sent pestilence? Well, who would own this one and only special Apis bull? It wasn't some priest, and it wasn't some peasant. It's Pharaoh. You're right, Laurie. It's Pharaoh. Pharaoh owns this cow. This cow is out in his field, protected, probably by a guard night and day because he represents Pharaoh himself. And he gets sick and it dies. And now the people look at this as a sign against Pharaoh himself. So what's Pharaoh's response? Pharaoh literally cannot believe it. What do you mean my cows all died? What do you mean my livestock is being under attack? And he actually has to send servants to go find out if it's true that the Israeli animals are still perfectly in good health. And of course they are. But the heart of Pharaoh was stubborn. He did not let the people go. If you're keeping track of the score, many livestock die. It doesn't say all Egyptian livestock. It says many. All of them that died were Egyptian, we know for sure. Israelite animals are safe. Pharaoh literally can't believe it. The scoreboard's getting ridiculous. That's a weird format thing. Oh well. Introducing Skemet, the goddess of epidemics and healing. Plague got you down? Pray to Skemet. Offer to Skemet. Epidemics are coming. We got to pray to this person. This is really important. We got to know who this person is. But it's not just Skemet that we have to talk to. Thoth. It's the god of medical knowledge and wisdom. You see a little ibis-headed here, right? Little bird-headed fella. So we have a cat-headed fellow, a bird-headed fellow, and we have Nephthys, the goddess of air and funeral preparation. This is the nasty one, ladies and gentlemen. Then they took ashes from the furnace, and the furnace that's used here, the word is translated in some versions as kiln. You know, like the big oven they cook bricks in? Like the bricks they were forced to make? It's very likely Moses literally went into Egypt, to the work site, scooped out ashes from the brick oven, and threw them in the air. The source of their torment in Egypt became the source of Egyptian torment everywhere. And he scatters towards heaven, and they cause boils to break out and sores on man and beast. And it doesn't say that the nation of Israel are free from this. But it's a little bit different. I think God has got some preferential treatment here. And the magicians could not stand. They are not able to. For number 3, the magicians cannot stand before Moses because of the boils. I don't know if that means they had to lay down, or if they just couldn't show up, or they were too embarrassed to show up. A lot of these magicians were priests who shaved everything, remember? Like, they were worried about lice, and now they're covered in pustules. They're scraping them with pots, rubbing ashes and stuff, and salt. We're talking like nastiness. And they can't show up now. Not only are they not winning anymore, not only are they not producing miracles anymore, they won't even show up to the contest. For the boils were on the magicians and on all of Egypt. Well, I think some Israelites might have gotten some. Maybe some of their animals got some. All of Egypt has them. And that's just gross. You see, the boils is bad enough, but Egyptians are famous for their doctors. Their medical knowledge was the pinnacle of its time. Arabic math might be very famous, or Greek philosophy and geometry might be very famous, and Italian astronomy might be very famous, but Egyptian medicine was where it was at. They had prosthetics in Egypt. You lost a leg, no problem, we'll get you a peg. They had fake hands for people. Sometimes golden ones if you're rich enough. And so you have this kind of idea, and this guy named Imhotep, under Pharaoh Dozier, became deified. They literally took a man who was so good with medicine, they made him into a god of medicine because he led physicians so well and learned so much. And what was Pharaoh's response to all these boils? It says the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. I mentioned this last week. It always bothered me that the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. The Lord pushed the buttons. Pharaoh is the one who had the heart that hardened. God didn't force anything on Pharaoh. He just pushed the buttons. You could say he's manipulative, but he was with everyone, right? When you're doing something wrong, that's what conviction is. It's godly manipulation. He's trying to get you to change your attitude. Not malicious, but positive, right? Chastisement. We don't like to use the word manipulation, but if that helps you understand what it is, chastisement is probably a better way to think of it. So God chastises Pharaoh, and like a little kid who won't eat his broccoli, no, I won't. You have to eat it, there's no dessert. Fine, I won't have any. If you don't eat it, you'll eat it tomorrow for breakfast. Fine, I don't care. You're going to go to bed then. Fine. How many of you have had a kid like that before? Maybe it's not broccoli, but something, right? He did not heed them. Now, I've looked at a lot of mummy pictures in doing this research, and I can't find another mummy like this one. And one of the reasons I think Amenhotep II is very likely to be our Pharaoh of the Exodus, is because when they mummified him, you'll notice the weird blotches of stuff on his neck, the white dots, and the kind of disfiguredness of his face. He still has at least scars of boils or something like them. And no other pharaoh, no other mummy of this style, not his dad, not his relatives, has this. And some people think, well, maybe it's a process of mummification. Really, the Egyptians, who flawlessly mummified hundreds of thousands of people, couldn't manage with the most important guy in their country. They brought in the B squad to take care of him. Sure, that sounds about right. Yeah. And I'm not saying by the time he died, he probably would have gotten rid of them, unless he was given a special visit by God and said, no, those ones don't heal up. I want people to know. And I don't know if that's what happened, but it's very interesting. It's not a proof necessarily, but it is a very interesting coincidence, you could say. Here's our scoreboard. Boils on man and beast, ashes from the kilns. Everyone in the land of Egypt gets this. The I am is way up. The gods of Egypt still can't put a score on the board. Plagues part 3. This is where God ratchets up the heat. If those other ones were appetizers and starter courses, this is the main course here. This is where things get kind of intense. And so we look here at Exodus 9 and 14. For this time I will send my plagues to your very heart, the Lord says to Pharaoh. I will send all my plagues to your very heart. It's personal now, dude. I'm not messing around anymore. I wasn't messing around before, but if you thought I was, here's the vowel. By the vowel, get a clue. Like it's done. It's on now. It's game time. You should know I'm doing this personally now. This is personal. And on your servants and your people, it's going to affect them too, that you may know. This is for your education, sir, that there is none like me in all the earth. No other God is going to help you. In Exodus 9 and 13, now if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, if I gave you sickness like I gave the cows, Egypt would be gone forever. Is that God's goal, is to wipe out Egypt? No, he's there to educate Egypt. He wants Egypt to improve. And if he had given them pestilence, they're gone forever, it says. God declares this to be true. They'd be cut off of the earth. And then we get to our key verse. But indeed for this purpose, I have raised you up. This is God speaking to Pharaoh. God raised Pharaoh up, he declares, that I may show my power in you. Your stubbornness, God will use. When we joke and say, well, if I can do it, then anybody could do it, because God even used a donkey. He can use me. God used Pharaoh, and he was stubborn. Is that the way God wanted to be used? Is it the way Egypt wanted God to use Pharaoh? Their God king? Their almost deity? Of course not. But if you want to be pig-headed about it, God will use you anyway. That my name may be declared in all the earth. The I am is going to be declared. As yet you exalt yourself. Pharaoh always puts himself above everything else against my people if you will not let them go. God is not mincing words at this point. In Exodus 9 and 19, therefore send now and gather all the livestock and all that you have in the field. So he says this as a test. This is very interesting to me. He doesn't just blatantly wipe them out. He says, hey, I am going to send hail and crush everything in that field. If you value your stuff, put it inside. Because hail shall come down on every man and every animal which is found in the field, and is not brought home, and they shall die. Now, Pharaoh at this point had lost what I believe is all of his livestock. But his servants hadn't, and I'm sure Pharaoh picked up some from them, maybe bought them, got some from trade, got some from other places because he needs to have some livestock for himself. He's not going to go hungry. He's probably still trying to live as large as he can. But he says, if you don't believe me, test me. I'll show you. And so they had to bring everything in. And now we got our next goddess of Egypt, Nut. That's a strange name. And it's hard to tell which one is Nut. She's the one at the top. Nut is literally the sky in most Egyptian art. She stretches over everything, and she's covered in stars. She's like midnight blue and covered in stars. And she's the goddess of the sky, the night sky, and the stars and the cosmos. You might be thinking, well, why would that be? Well, it matters, because where does hail and thunder and storm come from? Well, the sky. And if the god of the sky can't take care of it, oh, but there's more. You see, her dad, Shu, is the god of light, peace, air, and wind. Big thunderheads are not peaceful or slightly breezy. They're gusty. They're tempests. And so, if this giant hailstorm shows up, the gods of Egypt have again failed. What made it worse is this: there's lightning in this storm. So there's giant hail coming down, the likes of which Egypt has never seen, ever. I saw pictures from a couple years ago. I don't know if you guys saw this. How many of you saw the pictures from a couple years ago with the camels in the desert of Egypt covered in snow? Anybody see those? It snowed in Egypt 2 years ago. That's a really uncommon occurrence. But to have hail in Egypt apparently is a very uncommon occurrence, because first of all, it's a desert. You don't get thunderstorms going through there very often. And second of all, to have big hail with lightning, just not very common. And so the Egyptians feared this, maybe more than anything that's come before then. Because if they were hit by lightning or struck in a field and their house got set on fire from this kind of stuff, they thought to be incinerated was to lose out on the afterlife. If you were burned up and your body was destroyed, there was nothing to carry over to the afterlife. And so there was no afterlife for you. There's nothing to mummify, not even little bits of you. And hail was problematic also because it destroyed a lot of the papyrus they would have used to wrap mummies. It's really hard to preserve bodies that are mangled, and it's even harder to preserve them when there's nothing to wrap them in. And that doesn't count the food that was destroyed or the animals for the people who didn't listen, like Pharaoh. Imagine this is the second time he lost pretty much all of his livestock because he defies God. And so it gets really nasty there. And so we have our seventh plague of hail. This afterlife, affliction was made worse by the destruction of the flax, essential for wrapping mummies, and with the hail and Pharaoh's capacity for maintaining any semblance of order we had talked about last time. The Pharaoh's job was to protect order, to avoid disorder. And frogs is one thing, but you can say, well, those are natural. That could be excused. Or flies, well, those are from the frogs, all the blood, and that makes sense why some flies would show up. But a hailstorm against like 3 of their main gods? Because it's not just those 2. There's like 4 of them that all relate to the sky and to rain and to wind, and none of them could stop this? And so Pharaoh's hold on the people is lessening. Pharaoh himself cannot, just by sheer force of will, his success, do anything to stop this. Pharaoh gets desperate and admits his sin. He says he sinned more immediately after. It stops. Moses prays, the hail stops, and he sins again. He lies again. He recommits again to his arrogance and his boastfulness. The scoreboard's just going up. It's getting worse. In Exodus 10, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? God asked the question of Pharaoh, like, when are you just going to, give in, kid? Like, you're clearly not as tough as you thought you were. Don't call me kid. I'm the Pharaoh. I'm a big boy. But it's one of those kinds of things. He says, let my people go or else. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I do not want to hear at any point in my life, if I can avoid it in any way, God saying, or else. If my dad said or else, I was nervous. If my mom said or else, I was scared. If my grandma or grandpa said or else, I knew they meant business. When God says or else, that's the fear of the Lord on you. When God says or else. And Pharaoh's just like, Don't God on an or else, man. Are you crazy? If you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I'll bring locusts into your territory. These locusts are interesting. Anyway, And they shall cover the face of the earth, so that no one will be able to see the earth. I don't know if you've ever seen a locust swarm. My kids have this nature video they love to watch, and they actually have like a locust swarm that they film, and the camera is like at first zoomed in on this little tiny grasshopper, and then it shows how it changes into a locust. It's a really cool process. And then it shows all of them at one time, like flying off of the branches of stuff. And then the swarm is in the hundreds of millions. And it looks like a cloud. Like the background is blurry because there's so many of these bugs. And God said it will be worse than that. He says you won't be able to see the background. You'll only see the bugs. And they're going to eat anything the hail didn't destroy. Oh, there's still 3 branches left on that tree? Yeah, give me a minute. Go ahead, harden your heart, Pharaoh. Just give me a minute. I'll take care of that for you too. And wait, what about those other things that grow later, those other later harvests? Nope, they're going to go too. You see, God's not messing around. They shall also fill your houses like the frogs and the flies. There's going to be so many of them, they'll be everywhere too. And the houses of all of the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, no one in living memory remembers locusts. Now, locusts happen in the desert. It's true, they do. John the Baptist ate them, right? As far as we can tell, that's what it says he did. He ate locusts. And so this is a common thing in the desert, but not like this. In fact, the way the Bible phrases it, it makes it sound like the locusts that were there no longer exist. God had never allowed this form of grasshopper to turn into a locust before ever. And he blew a strong east wind out of Sinai, and they landed, and they ate everything. Unlike anything ever before. And Pharaoh's servant said, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? We know it's a trap. This is ridiculous. Pharaoh, when will you knock it off?" Like everyone else has already thrown in the towel. The priests have thrown in the towel. The magicians have thrown in the towel. His servants, Pharaoh's servants, under penalty of death for displeasing the Pharaoh, are like, "Pharaoh, come on, man. This is not okay. When are you going to quit? Do you not yet know that Egypt is destroyed?" They thought there's no coming back from this. They forgot this is only number 7. Maybe they didn't know yet. Oh, sorry, the 8th plague. They'd only had 7 up to now. Now there's 8th. There's still 2 more to come. They think it's over. They think this is done. Pharaoh finally sees some sense and agrees to let them go. He says, "Fine, you know what? I'll let them go." And this is a longer section in Exodus. He says, "I'll let them go." And Moses is telling him, Moses tells him clearly, God said everyone, youngest to oldest. And Pharaoh says he cannot let the little ones go. I don't have time for a big aside here, but it is no surprise to me that the one group of people the world cannot let go by without trying to mess with them are the little ones. It was true back then, and it's true now. It'll be true in the future. That's the one group they can't let go by. It's the one group we have to protect and not get distracted or sidetracked on. No matter how much I like fantasy football, I can't spend hours of doing that and not spend the time with my kids protecting them, watching over them, and guiding them. Or any other thing. There's nothing I can let get in my way when it comes to that stuff, no matter how much I enjoy it. Because the world is not going to quit. If I take a break, they're happy to step in. Introducing Neper, the god of grain and prosperity. Things were still looking up. They could still eat. Egypt is famous for their grain. They're famous for their crops. That's why Joseph went there. That's why Joseph managed that, made it better. They're famous for this. And God wipes it out in an afternoon. All the remaining plant life, anything green that grew, is gone. And a dozen other crop-related, rain-related, flood-related, harvest-related deities are made fools of in the process. What does Pharaoh do? Says the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. God just nudges him, and Pharaoh does all the prideful work. Oh man, that scoreboard's pathetic. One side is so lopsided. Our final God. Introducing Ra. You'll notice he has no horns to hold the sun in place. Like the sun just floats above his head. He's the falcon-headed god of Egypt. He's the god of creation, of kingship, and the sun. No one is more important than Ra. No one. And among his gods, He's worshipped by multiple different names that change and enrich and become bigger over time. Re, Amun-Ra, Atum, Aten, and had the power over all the other gods. And up until now, God had saved this for last. Jehovah God had saved Ra for last because he knew, well, we can always trust it. Ra will hold through. Ra will keep it. You can't block out the sun for us. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and it did in Goshen. Without any warning, Moses does not even show up. God doesn't say, go tell Pharaoh something. He just says, do this. Pharaoh is chilling in his palace. Moses is out someplace. He raises that rod up, and darkness covers the whole land. And Pharaoh says, you can't do this. Like 3 days later, you got to get rid of this darkness. You can't leave us in the dark. Like, this is going to kill everything. Let us go then. Fine, you and all the kids can go. No, we need animals. We're going to bring our animals, and you've got to supply us with some. Well, which animals? All of them. No, you can't have all the animals, he says. You can't take away all my toys. The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And Pharaoh freaks out. Get away from me. Take heed to yourself, Moses, Aaron, and see my face no more. From the day you see my face, you shall die. If I ever see you again, you're dead. Even though God had made Moses like Pharaoh himself, like a god to Pharaoh's eyes, he said, if I see you again, I will attack you. I will kill you. And Moses answers and says, you have spoken well. I will never see your face again. Rough. No sun for 3 days. Goshen remained sunny. No God came to save them. The final plague. Introducing man, the God of himself. Really, this whole time, has it been Ra? Has it been Isis? Has it been Skemet? Nope. It's always been Pharaoh. And there he is, Amenhotep II, building statues to himself as if he were that important. I'm thankful he did. I'm thankful the Egyptians keep a lot of good records. Makes my job easier. Exodus 11:1, then the Lord said to Moses, I will bring one more plague upon Pharaoh in Egypt. Afterward, he will let you go from here. And when he lets you go, as the promise was given earlier in Exodus 1, he will surely drive you out altogether. You're going to be let go and booted, lock, stock, and barrel. In preparation to go, God said, ask riches of your neighbors, and the neighbors gave it. God institutes the Passover, a special meal with special qualities and attributes to do as a memorial to remember this moment by. This moment matters, ladies and gentlemen. So God says you have to remember it. They had to go to bed that night in their shoes, in their traveling clothes, with their jackets on. They had to put blood of protection over the door, the blood of the lamb, if you will. It was related to the consecration of firstborns, and there's a reason for that. In just a second, we're going to find out. It was also the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which lasted for 7 days. For 7 days, they had to eat unleavened bread because they were not allowed to have time to let it rise. They had to take the bread with them and bake it on the go, and they had no time to let it rise. So they would eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Exodus 12:29, and it came to pass at midnight that the Lord struck the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, not literally at that time of night, but you know what I mean, he's the guy in charge, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, the lowest of the low, the guy they'd put in prison. Prisoners' firstborns, Pharaoh's firstborns, and all the livestock too. Every beast. The rats lost their kids that day. Little birds died. Cattle and horse and beast died. unless they were within the household protected by the blood. And in Exodus 12:30 it says, "So Pharaoh rose in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt." I don't know if you guys are movie people or not. I imagine this cry is kind of similar to the one from The Princess Bride. In The Princess Bride, they have the special torture machine, and they take years off this guy's life, and he screams as if it's the end of the world. And I imagine that this was similar to that, except it wasn't one guy screaming out in utter despair. It was every household screaming out in utter despair. For there was not a house where there was not one dead. The people in Egypt now were truly broken. Not only had God broken all of their gods down to nothing, he had broken Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh, this whole time, I'm better than you still. I'm still in charge. I'm still connected to the gods. I'm still nothing. Pharaoh has nothing, not even his own firstborn son. And so at this point, the scoreboard has gone infinite. It's not 1 or 2 or 12 or you can't even count, really. And it's very sad because of pride that this all had to occur. It's very sad that a long time ago, Amenhotep's daddy and his daddy before him not just persecuted the Israelites, but decided to murder their babies. And God says, I'll get you back. You better watch yourself. What you sow comes back. There's a sowing and a reaping. And Egypt had sowed destruction of babies. And God said, you will be repaid for that. Against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgments, he declares in Exodus 12:12. For I am the Lord. God had to take everything, all the security, all the true value from Pharaoh before he would release Israel. How far will God have to go with you? We're not there yet. I'll get to that in the last lesson, but I just want to toss it out there. We all go through an Exodus if you haven't figured it out. How far will God have to go with you? God brought Egypt low as they possibly could go. Probably worse. They say the worst thing you can do is to bury a child. And a community burying a child is very sad. When Travis and Maria lost their little one, we all cried. Many of us went to the gravesite. We cried with them. We gave them consolation gifts. We prayed for them. We spent time with them. It was terrible. But now multiply that across the whole community. Would we ever really recover the way we should? If Natalia was gone, Mace, she's gone. Chloe, right? Wayne's gone, right? Can you imagine? Violet, no more. I can't even begin to imagine what this looks like. And all of us, my core's gone, just. He gave them feasts to remind them of his saving grace. Israel was not going to forget this, should never forget this, because they were spared from it. And he prepared them to be ejected from slavery with animals, wealth, and their families. All the real riches. Not just the money, but the real riches. God has showed his plans cannot fail. He used Pharaoh to do what he wanted to do. He certainly can use the rest of us too. If you're interested in doing a little bit of homework, I've got 3 more links up here for you. That third one, The Exodus Pharaoh Explained, is actually the video that got me started on this journey of exploration. It's a fabulous video by a guy who lives in Jordan, and he's an archaeologist. He's a very, very intelligent fellow. Interesting stuff. Puts a lot of these clues and pieces together in ways that I won't be able to do for you here. But if you're interested, go check it out. Hopefully you guys learned something today. I don't try to end on a down note usually, but in this case, it's a little noted. It's worthy. This is one of the saddest events in human history, in my opinion. Either way, it is Tuesday, and there's probably some snacks out back, right? and you guys get some time to fellowship, hang out, shake hands, use the restroom, and have a great day. We'll see you back here at 11 for worship.